Good afternoon, Alexis. Good to see you again. This is Tom.
Hello, Mr. Clayton. Nice to see you.
Some feedback there. Chief, good afternoon once again.
Good afternoon, Tom. Eddie.
Okay, and then I sent over the chart, that pie chart. I take it that was already received.
Yes, we did get that. I sent it out also.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna step away real quick. Good afternoon, Mr. Whitman.
Hey, Chief, how are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Montalban.
Hello, everybody.
How's everybody doing?
Good. By the way, Alexis, you can ignore my email. I realize that Google itself sends me the invite.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I think we just have a couple more. Let's get to a quorum, then we'll start the meeting.
Hi, Dr. Playa.
Good afternoon. How's it going?
Good, you?
Good.
Are you cold? It's sweat time. Back again?
It is cold. I was actually volunteering this morning out at the curative testing site at the rec center, and I barely warmed up now. I was frozen all morning, but it was nice to be away from a computer screen. So
That's great. Thank you for helping.
of course, we all got to pitch in where we can.
Okay, well, I guess, let's see. 3 of us. Did Lee Einer say that he was going to be here? Alexis, did he say anything?
He did not respond to anything to me.
Okay. All right, maybe we'll just wait another 60 seconds or so. Yeah, I was actually outside too. I was going through our wood pile and taking all the long pieces that don't fit in our fireplace and chopping them down. Restacking firewood at the end of the season, so it's neat until next year. Or I should say next winter.
That's one of those jobs that everybody has to do this time of year, isn't it?
Yep.
Nice.
Okay, there's Lee. Okay, so I call this meeting to order. It's 3:05, and let's do the roll call. And I know we have some guests, so Chief. Oh, I think you're on mute.
I'm present.
Okay. Joe Whiteman.
Present.
Kimberly Blake.
Present.
Mary Helen Wickert. Okay, I don't see her. Lee Einer.
Present.
G.C. Stumber. Okay, not here, and I see that we have some guests as well. So I will just mention D.A. Thomas Clayton and Gilbert Deschamps and Pat Leehan. We may have more guests joining. And so we'll go ahead and start. So it's come to my attention that we have lost Aurora Kim Delgado, who has served on this commission in the past, most recently up until I think last year. So actually, I don't know. Does anyone know how or why she passed away? No? Okay, well, it's very sad.
Cancer, it was cancer.
Cancer, okay, that's very sad. Yeah, she was really a wonderful person, and I know from my past experience, I really enjoyed working with her on this commission. She had a good sense of humor and was very warm, and so I know that personally I'll miss her a lot. So it's on the agenda. Let's observe a moment of silence for her. Okay, so let's go ahead and move into business. We have the approval of the agenda.
Real quick,
Yes.
Mr. Montalban, if I can, this week was National Public Safety Telecommunications Week for our dispatch, so I just want to thank them for their continued hard work, dedication, and commitment to serving Las Vegas, and also being the lifeline for our police, fire, and ambulance personnel as they're out there. Without them, we wouldn't be able to respond to the calls for service and them hearing the first words of someone in a panic or in a situation that they really never understand the second part of the outcome of what happened on that call for service. So we're going to start communicating with our dispatchers more on serious incidents or domestic violence, because I think it shows them that we care as law enforcement, but also for them to show, you did help these people out in the time of need.
Okay, yeah, very good. Yeah, we should always remember that whole crew. They're indispensable, and they're actually a key part of the entire response picture. Without them, the officers would be at a huge disadvantage. That's good. So, okay, let's move on to the approval of the agenda. Everyone should have received the agenda, and it was posted. Are there any comments or alterations to the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Okay, if there's no objections to that, do we have a second?
Sure, I'll second.
That's good. Joseph, you can tell I was looking at you when I said that. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the agenda and a second. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Lee, we can't see you, but I think that was you that said aye, so.
Hold on.
Okay, there you go. All right.
Wait. Yeah.
There it is.
All right, we got it?
We can see you. Excellent.
Cool.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, so the agenda has been approved. Let the records show. And then we have the minutes from the last meeting. Are there any comments on the minutes? Okay, they're pretty clear cut. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting?
I move to approve the minutes from the March 18th meeting.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
Sure.
Okay, Joseph Whiteman seconded. Okay, sure. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Okay, so the minutes from last month's meeting on the 18th have been approved. Okay, I see that we have a couple of guests here. So this is time for public input. So I think that DA Clayton was going to do a presentation today, and if Pat Leehan has some comments as well, maybe we can start with the district attorney.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I just wanted to come before you as a part of my administration in an effort of transparency and cooperation with law enforcement and the community as a whole, quite honestly. One of the efforts I want to do is get out to the elected officials, committees, and provide as much information and stand for any questions that you may have. So that's my intent as I serve as your district attorney. I started now in January, so I've been on as the DA since January 1st. Well, a few months into the office, but I've been practicing as an attorney since for 30 years. The last 16 as a prosecutor. So that's what I bring to the table. I just want to give some information. Hopefully everybody got some statistical information. I think it was provided to the board members or the committee members, and we'll go into that. I think hopefully it was provided to you. It's a pie chart that shows what our current set of circumstances. I think with respect to our office, there's 13 judicial districts in the state. Our district, which is the 4th judicial district, we cover Mora, San Miguel, and Guadalupe counties. The population, as you're probably aware for all three counties is about 37,000 people. The bulk of that being here in San Miguel County, and Las Vegas about, I guess, 13,000. So the district has 3 district judges. One of them has since been elevated to the Court of Appeals. Judge Gerald Baca is now going to be serving on the Court of Appeals, so that vacancy is taking place literally at the end of this month, and we're going through the process of filling that. But we have 2 other district judges, Judge Aragon and Judge Gallegos. And here in San Miguel County, we have 2 magistrate judges, as you're aware, Judge Rivera and Judge Montaño. The situation regarding the defense bar, the criminal defense bar, is we're rather limited. I have 9 attorneys in our office here, in the DA's office. And right now, there are, I believe, 4 or 5 public defenders, private attorneys on public defender contract. So they're quite honestly, they're hurting. They're overloaded. The public defender's office, they don't have a full-time office in this district. So they're all on contract. And right now, it's rather limited. But we do have private attorneys, but on the public defender, those individuals that cannot afford their own attorney, we're limited in those resources here in this district. As I indicated, I have 9 attorneys, but I have 38 full-time employees within our office. Our budget is approximately $3.8 million, and we just went through the process, the legislative process, as you're well aware. We have a flat budget from the previous years, so that's where we're going. In the statistical information that I wanted to provide you is, in the past 16 years that I've been with the DA's office, serving under Richard Flores, we prosecuted approximately 27,000 cases. That's an average of about 1,600 a year. Currently, we're right at that point. 1,557 cases are within our office. In 2020, we prosecuted 1,300 cases. Currently, the caseload in San Miguel County covers about 70%. Of that, about half of that is the city of Las Vegas. The group that you oversee through your committee. In Mora, we have about 10%. In Guadalupe County, about 20%. Of that, that's currently pending, it's about 40% are felony cases. 60% are misdemeanor, and a small number, literally less than 1%, are children court, because we do have, as part of our process, children court cases. We have 18 open cases. The bulk of our cases, I indicated, are misdemeanor in nature, and that's unfortunately domestic violence and DWI. And you'll see that in the pie chart as that was provided. DWI, total of about 11%, if you account both felony and misdemeanor. And then in property crimes, about 17%, domestic violence, misdemeanor and domestic violence felony, 7%, and then violent crimes, about 25%. So 23% according to the chart. So this is just the information of a current state of where we're at. So I just wanted to share that with you. Some of the programs that we're running are long existing programs. We have the drug court program, which assists people that are in that have substance abuse as an underlying issue. And it's sometimes cases that aren't necessarily drug cases, but let's say a larceny, a burglary, battery, something along those nature. But the underlying issue is a substance abuse. The courts have been diverting individuals, and this is post-adjudication, after they've been convicted, into drug court. And it's an intensive outpatient program, and we work with the collaborative of efforts within the community to see what we can do to provide them resources, get them off the narcotics. So that's our drug court program. It was run by District Judge Gerald Baca. As I indicated, he's now going to the Court of Appeals. It will now be run by Judge Flora Gallegos. She will be our drug court judge. And they have a very good program. It's at the district court level. We also have a sobriety court, which is run at the magistrate court level, and that's primarily for DWI, but not exclusively. But it's a similar outpatient program that monitors compliance, monitors treatment for those with substance abuse level, and like I said, predominantly alcohol driven. We also have within our office, within my office here at the DA's office, a program called the Pre-Prosecution Diversion Program. It is a diversion program that's within our office. It's those individuals that are typically first offender, nonviolent offenses that have already been charged and proceeding in the criminal justice system. But because of the low-level nature of the charges, or because of the lack of criminal history of the individual, they are put in a diversion program, which basically means the case will be dismissed in its entirety upon completion. It's not by a probation officer, it's by a compliance monitor in my office. We have a number of individuals in there. Pre-prosecution diversion programs are well known in the state. Every district attorney's office has one. In addition, with the chief here and the city, we are looking at opening up a LEADS program. And for those of you that don't know, it's a law enforcement assisted diversion program, and it's actually at the front end of a case. Charges aren't even filed. And in fact, there's no arrest. It's at the front, literally at the front end of the program. We're in the implementation stage or the development stage at this point. And earlier this afternoon, Chief Crispin and I participated in kind of that development where it's going to take a number of months, and we're going to try to have individuals that have substance abuse, but not even to the arrest stage. The officer will have the opportunity to take that individual, make a determination, is this something that qualifies for low-level nonviolent offenses that have substance abuse? And it could very well include felony-level possession. And so we're trying to divert them. The sooner the better we get them out of the criminal justice system and into a mental health treatment modality. That's the intent. This has been tried in I think it's in Seattle, Washington, in a number of the Pacific Northwest communities. San Francisco, Santa Fe has one. I believe Bernalillo County has one, very limited. So we would be one of a few communities in the state of New Mexico, and it's being led by our chief here as a LEADS program. And like again, it's a law enforcement assisted diversion. So it helps our population get out of the criminal justice system, so we don't get them into the cycle. Because once they get into the system, it's hard to get out. And I'll be the first person to recognize that. And in particular, substance abuse, we need to treat it as a means of, as a disease, so as to try to mitigate that. Now, I can tell you from our perspective of me as a prosecutor, if they're selling drugs, I'm going to prosecute them. Plain and simple. They're selling this poison to our community, and that's not acceptable. And so as a prosecutor, I will help those that have addictions. We will help those that have issues of whether it's heroin, whether it's methamphetamine, whatever narcotic that they have an addiction. Treatment is the approach we're going to take, and we know that's the more humane, and it's also the more cost-effective, and it's the best way to address the problems within the community, because we know 80-90% of our crime is substance abuse driven. That's the statistics that we're seeing, the numbers. So if we can help our community by getting off these narcotics, then I think we help our community as a whole. And quite honestly, I don't think there's, narcotics knows no boundaries, whether it's geographic boundaries, whether it's economic boundaries, education boundaries. Narcotic substance abuse addiction runs the gamut. And so, and I think all of us know somebody that's in that world. And I personally suffered that kind of situation where my nephew, my godson, died of an overdose. He was in treatment, but he relapsed, and that relapse took his life. And now his child grew up without her father. And so we all have those kind of experiences. We all have those kind of knowledge. So our intent is to try to help those that are caught in the throes of an addiction. But from our perspective, if you're selling the drugs, we're going to prosecute. And we're going to ask that the courts incarcerate you. We need to take you out of the equation because you're providing this poison to the community. So that's the intent with respect to substance abuse. along the lines, looking at my cheat sheet here, we have dedicated an individual within our office to help find substance abuse treatment, because I'm sure you all know there aren't enough treatment facilities within our communities. And in fact, inpatient, we're sorely lacking it. And in particular for females, it is very difficult to find a treatment facility for females, let alone, I mean, anybody, quite honestly. And then if they have, and I'm not a mental health person, but if you have dual diagnosis issues, then that even makes it that much more problematic. So I've dedicated an individual within our office to identify programs, determine what services exist geographically within the city of Las Vegas, within the region, within the state, and then we're going to find out what type of services they provide. Is it inpatient? Is it outpatient? What kind of individuals they will accept. And so that's the intent. In addition, because of where we're at here in Las Vegas, we have obviously the Behavioral Health Institute. Our intent, and I'm trying to work with Judge Gallegos on this, and she has an intent to create a mental health court. There are people within our community that have mental health issues that when they get caught into the criminal justice system and it doesn't work. It's not working. So we're going to try to do a mental health court that addresses those with mental health issues, not in the criminal justice system, but maybe in another more treatment-oriented approach. So that's something we want to pursue. Along those lines, a veterans court. There have been veteran courts set up in other jurisdictions. We have a number of people that have served our community and have admirably served our community in the military. And they find themselves with a dilemma, a situation. So we're working on that as well. And then the last thing I just want to touch base, we're trying to create relationships with our communities, such as this committee. Yesterday I was with the city council, a presentation. I was with the Guadalupe County Commission this morning via Zoom, via technology. And we're trying to reach out to all the committees and provide them whatever information I can. Let them know that we're here to help, and basically have an open door policy. And if there's any questions that you may have, feel free to call, and we'll open it up for discussion and questions. But the intent is to create a transparent office, an office of cooperation, and an office that will answer you the questions that you have. So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chief, I'll stand for any questions or any comments.
I had a quick question. I know that there had been some discussion of the county and I think the city and probably your office working together to create a new rehab facility just outside of town. Can you tell us about the status of that?
Yes, that's with the MSG Group, and in fact, we went and had a presentation before the Guadalupe County County Commission this morning, seeking their support. We've sought and secured the support from the city, Pecos Village, Mora County, Guadalupe County, and the intent is to try to create an inpatient treatment much more elaborate than what we have at present. And as I indicated, it's sorely lacking. Matt Probst from El Centro has been heading it up with our sheriff, Sheriff Lopez, and it's part of this group MSG, and I think that's Mora, San Miguel, Guadalupe Collaborative, and it's been in existence for a number of years, and they've been, and I'm getting on now that I'm the district attorney, but they've been working on it for some time, and they're looking at acquiring the Epiduran building, which used to be the Human Services Department building, which is across the street from the Behavioral Health Institute, I believe, where the donut shop is. It's in that area. It's a state facility, state building. It's been vacant and dormant for some time. And as I understand, the county sought to have that building given to the county through the General Services Department, and sought some funding, and I'm not sure the status of that, to rehab that building so they can have a place for long-term treatment, inpatient treatment, but also a drop-off point for those in crisis, for the LEADS program. So that's ongoing. And I don't know, Dr. Blea, Chief, I think they're part of the group that may be able to provide some additional information. But that's ongoing. I know I spoke to the sheriff yesterday as well as Mr. Probst. Things are happening. Now, if it gets to that fruition, I think a lot of pieces got to come into play.
Thank you, DA Clayton and Roy, if I can speak to and just add and elaborate a little bit further as to what DA Clayton was speaking to. Yes, the Moro San Miguel Guadalupe Local Collaborative 4 has been in existence for, golly, a number of years, like probably already like over a decade. It's been quite some time. But some other areas that we're looking at specifically, and I can speak to this, is that we are looking how the university can also to support the workforce development of the individuals who will need to hire, to operate this facility. We will also be, looking at what specific certifications and licensure is needed to ensure that as university, we're helping to support that effort as well. In addition to that, the subcommittee that's working on the residential treatment center will also be looking at issuing an RFP, a request for proposals for a provider to provide the programmatic services there, so the therapy and the different type of programming necessary. An additional aspect of that will include the architecture and planning pieces of the actual facility as well. If I'm not mistaken, there was a request for funding at the legislature, and I believe that we were successful. And don't quote me on this, but I believe it was about $500,000 in which was received, as long as I don't think there was any line item vetoes by the governor, but I believe that's what we're expecting to receive to start that specific project and get it going. So lots of people are working in different regards to ensure that we're moving this residential treatment center forward. One additional thing that I will add, and this MSG has been meeting for some time, and we've also worked with HRSA, federal HRSA grant, in which we had a planning grant. So a lot of this work to establish a treatment center has been done already. We have a document, a planning document, in which was a product of that work, which also included, a workforce development piece, but also the architectural planning. And we did apply for funding. Probably it's been over a year. We did apply for funding to have through HRSA for a rural residential treatment facility, and there was only I believe 5 awarded nationwide, and we met all the criteria but one criteria, and that criteria was having the law enforcement assisted diversion program. Now that we have that, in the future, if we were to apply for that funding, we're fairly confident that we would be successful. But we've looked at it collectively as a community. All hands are on deck, looking at and identifying what gaps exist to us being able to do this, and working to build, that collaboration to ensure that we can make this a successful project for members of our community to really serve them. So I just wanted to add that additional information, and I'll stand if there are any for any questions specifically as it relates to that as well.
And along those lines, I think Dr. Blair is absolutely right. I think it's a private-public kind of operation. I mean, I think she talked about an RFP. I think something similar happened years ago when the county created the Tri-County Family Justice Center. And for those of you that are familiar with that provides assistance to those that are in domestic violence kind of situations. And that was where the county secured the facility, but it's now run by a nonprofit. See, so you have this collaborative effort, and it's all hands on deck, as Dr. Blair indicated. We have a lot of people coming together, and it's providing a service for the community. Similarly, that's, I think, the intent of this program, and MSG has been, I think, Dr. Blair is absolutely correct. It's over a decade in existence, and it's been a lot of work has been put. The groundwork is there. Now it's just a matter of all the resources coming to play, and hopefully we have a facility of significant size, and if there's been a funding appropriation, hopefully that is taking place to address the substance abuse issues.
So this should really help our local hospital emergency room as well, which is
Absolutely.
Has been taking the burden of mental health patients.
And what's happening, I think, for substance abuse issues, a lot of times, I mean, if officers are arresting them on the scene for whatever reason, they go to the hospital. You're absolutely right, the hospital. And then if there's a mental health issue, now the BHI, Behavioral Health Institute, and hopefully this, if they have a crisis center component of it, properly trained by our local education institutions, we can address that to alleviate some of the burdens that some of these other entities, like the hospital, are having to take on, and not with the resources that are necessary.
Yeah, sorry, Dr. Blair, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to add that the hospital's been involved in the conversation too in providing medical detox services. And so we're looking at it from all aspects, an integrated approach to care in which the medical aspect being right across the street from NBHI. So for those individuals who are having co-occurring disorders, they'll be able to get the proper and necessary care in order to really be treated in a way that's going to have, long-term benefits for them. And we're not just, treating one aspect of, the substance use at the time. We're really getting at the root of why some people are using is those mental health issues and concerns, in which if they're given the necessary support to treat that simultaneously with treating the medical aspects of addiction and withdrawal, they have greater chances of getting, to be in recovery, but also remaining in recovery. So that it's really great that the hospital has been supportive of the efforts as well.
So I had another question I brought up a few times over the last couple of years. I was just wondering, did these 3 counties actually file a lawsuit against Purdue Pharma or other pharma companies that are producing OxyContin and other drugs and intentionally addicting the public? The only reason I ask is because, obviously they did, have to pay out, or on the hook to pay out billions and billions in compensation to counties and municipalities. I was just wondering if any of those
counties, I know our Attorney General Valderas did file a lawsuit and participated in that. I believe Mora County did as well. I think they jumped on that lawsuit as well, but I'm not sure about San Miguel or Guadalupe County. I don't know if others may be able to answer, but I know our Attorney General was definitely leading that charge for New Mexico, along with, and I know Mora County did file a lawsuit.
Okay, that's good, because hopefully that'll be a source of additional funding for this program. I'm sorry, Lee, go ahead.
I was privy to the conversations when I was at the city, which was at the same time this was going on. I'm going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Clayton, but this was 2016, 2017. And the discussion really wasn't, do we sue so much as do we opt in with the state, or do we drop out and sue on our own, hoping to get more, albeit with arguably less legal resources than were at the state's disposal.
I think you're right, absolutely, and I think it was an opting in, jumping on the lawsuit that the Attorney General's office was pursuing.
Yeah, so that was really, in some respects, a no-lose proposition. I don't think it was a matter of our having to file suit as a municipality or as a county or lose out on the money. It was just how the litigation was being handled, if that helps.
So I just have 2 other quick questions. Do we have any idea of when this might actually happen. I know there's a lot of moving parts. You have the architecture, you have the plans. It looks like there's money from the legislature. Does it look like things will start to move forward this year on this project?
That is the hope. I think I'd be the wrong person to be asking that, Mr. Chairman. I think Sheriff Lopez or Matt Probst would be probably. I think they have the fingers on the pulse of what's going on, and maybe Dr. Blay may be able to shine some light on that. I think they're. I know the sheriff had indicated they were meeting with the GSD secretary recently, and I think it's happening, but how quickly, don't know.
I would just say, yes, we have a few things left to shore up to ensure that the facility is actually transferred from the General Services Division over to San Miguel County. And I believe once that is finalized, let me back up and add that I know we have the support of the General Services Division as well as Behavioral Health Services Division, and I believe Department of Health as well. And so my understanding is they've drafted a letter and that's been submitted to the governor to sign off on. So we're awaiting that. But the initial funding that was received, I believe, is for capital improvements and infrastructure improvements to get that facility to a place where it could become operable. And so there's those few things that need to happen prior to, any action moving forward. Not any action moving forward, but in order to be able to give a definitive timeline as to when this might be implemented. However, I will say we're not waiting for that to happen. We're moving forward. We actually had a meeting earlier in the week, I believe on Tuesday, and we're talking about the workforce development plan. So bringing in stakeholders who, are familiar and have experience with staffing these types of facilities. What are some things that we need to think about? What are even some challenges locally with staffing certain positions? We are in dire need for licensed mental health providers. In the community, we do not have a lot of providers in the community who are what's called LADAC certified, which means they have a special certification in substance misuse. And so looking at it from those aspects, also looking at it from the aspect of medical staff, what type of medical staff needs to exist in order to have this facility operate, but then also aspects to consider, how will we, continue to operate it, and what is required from, Medicaid in particular in order to sustain the program over time. Are all things that we're looking at. I wish we'd know definitively, Roy, when that date might be. But I think as we get more information, probably within the next couple months, I'd be happy to, update this group because I'm involved in that subcommittee that's working on the residential treatment center. So we meet regularly and I'm looped in with what's going on. I'd be happy to update the commission on a regular basis.
Okay, that's fantastic. Just two really quick questions, and I think these are fairly simple questions, but I know in talking to some addicts here in Las Vegas who have had court-ordered treatment at Hoy up above Espanola, and what has been expressed to me is that they did really well while they were in treatment, but the treatment only lasted 6 weeks, and they wish that it would last 3 months or 4 months or 6 months. So since this is a residential treatment facility, and I know you have really good people involved, Mr. Probst and the sheriff, et cetera, are there any thoughts or plans to maybe have an optional extended treatment plan for those who, because I think this would be voluntary. I mean, people I've talked to actually want it. They don't really want to relapse. So do you know anything about that in terms of the planning?
I think as part of it, and Dr. Bayer, jump in at the appropriate, I think the intent is inpatient, but also the attending, because the aftercare is essential.
Right.
You're absolutely right. They're only going to be in there for a finite period of time, whatever that may be, whether it's 6 weeks, 6 months, and even those long-term facilities, it's the aftercare that carries the sobriety. and that's what's necessary. And if we don't have that, so that's part of the workforce development that Dr. Blair talks about. We need providers, and we do have a number of providers within the community, but we have a need that far exceeds our capacity at this point. So I think we need to develop those within the inpatient treatment possibilities, but also out in the communities. And we do have that, I guess, framework, but we just don't have the resources right now. At least that's my understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, as part of your workforce development stakeholders, I assume that would include the nursing program at Luna as well. Okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe, I'm thinking post-COVID, it might be easier to attract young medical students and professionals into this particular area, but I guess we'll see. Okay, so do we have, is there additional information that you wanted to present in your presentation?
No, just if there's any other questions, I'll be available to answer questions.
Okay. Pat, I saw you jump on and jump off.
I just thought you were going to go to the next person.
Okay.
I was getting ready.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much, District Attorney Clayton. That was extremely helpful. And this is really good information. And just speaking for myself, I appreciate everything that you're doing with the sheriff and with lots of people, and also with our chief and our police department to address a lot of these issues. And I know that drugs account for a lot of crime. I didn't realize it was 80% here in Las Vegas. So I think the direction you're going is a really good one. Treatment instead of just pure incarceration. So
Right.
Unless they're a drug dealer, I agree with that also. But it's good. It's really good. We appreciate what you're doing.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so we have another guest, Pat Leehan. Do you have something you would like to present?
I didn't. I actually was here just to learn. But as the discussion went on, I just wanted to mention that the MSG group, if anyone wants to join the group or just sit in now and then, we meet the first and third Wednesday, 8:30 to 10 a.m. And always on that agenda is Sheriff Lopez with the update on the Treatment and Recovery Center. Very helpful meetings if you want to stay up to speed, in addition to what Kimberly will be sharing with this group. So just wanted to let you know that's available.
Okay, thank you. That's great. And it sounds like you have a tremendous team, so that's also fantastic. Yeah. I've worked with Matt on some other things, in that community, so I know that he's really a powerhouse. He's full of energy, so it's really good. Okay, so all right. So as far as let's move on to new business. Then, do we have new business? We have the presentation already. Do we have other new business besides moving into the survey discussion?
Did we have public input? Nobody added public input, Alexis?
No, not that I received.
Okay. So I think what we can do then is go ahead and talk about the survey and also talk about the bylaws. So let's start with the survey. And I know that the notes that, that Alexis posted are, this is coming from the PD. It's fairly straightforward. And again, just to review, since we have public, this can be viewed by the public. This is an initiative to help the police department determine how they are viewed by the public and to get direct public input into their performance and conduct as part of a very strong emphasis on community policing and community police cooperation and partnership. So we have had in the last two meetings some discussion about the survey itself. I'm just summarizing, any of you can jump in. And Leehan has identified some existing surveys, one of which is from the Department of Justice, which appears to cover almost all of what we would like to cover here in the community. So a lot of our prior discussion had to do with whether or not, how we get this out, whether or not we can include people who are younger than the age of 18, or if we can go down younger than that, what kind of mechanisms the city or the city utilities might be able to add in terms of getting the word out. This will be, what we discussed is this would be a SurveyMonkey type online survey. So most of the print, advertising for it, et cetera, will actually point people to the survey. There was some discussion about people who are not online who might need to do this in print. And if they did do it in a written survey, how do we get that information into SurveyMonkey accurately so that their input can be included. And as Kimberly pointed out, the great thing about SurveyMonkey is it already has a lot of analytical tools in the background, so we can kind of slice and dice the survey results. If there are certain things that SurveyMonkey's analytical tools do not reveal, we might have to do some of that analysis manually. But I think going with SurveyMonkey, it's a very good tool. I've used it on many, many occasions, and just about everybody I know uses it. So I think that's a good path. So based on that, for discussion today, maybe what we could do, Lee, for the public, since we do have public viewing here, is to actually just go through the survey questions that we have pulled from the big survey that you found. And then I think last month we talked about adding another question to it. So should we just go through and just read the survey questions as we have discussed them from the Department of Justice survey?
Why not?
Sounds good. If you have those, Lee, could you just go through them?
I don't have those up in front of me, no.
Oh, okay. Okay, what we should do then, I don't know if I have them in front of me either. Hang on. Okay, what we should if we don't have them to read out loud at this meeting, what we should do then, Alexis, is to post those questions along with the meeting minutes as an addendum to the minutes, so anybody in the public can look at them and provide input. But I think, as we did discuss, the questions are very, very straightforward. And they have to do with the public's perception of their own police department and police performance, and they're very well thought through. So I think we can do that. And then what we may have to do, Chief, and I'm sorry to push this out another month, but that way we can get public input on the questions themselves, on the survey itself, and then we can actually vote to approve the survey questions, and in the next meeting vote to start to move forward with turning this into a SurveyMonkey survey and starting to actually market the survey through Facebook and through the utilities bills and everything else we talked about. Are there any further thoughts on that? Kimberly, do you have any thoughts?
I have it pulled up now if you want those questions read.
Oh, you have it? Okay, yeah, go ahead. If you pulled it up, please do.
Okay. So number one, to what extent does your law enforcement agency develop relationships with community members? Oh, wait a minute.
Those are them. I have them.
I'm looking at this. I'm wondering if it was, no, it's okay. It's the right questions. To what extent does your law enforcement agency regularly communicate with community members, e.g. websites, emails, or public meetings? 3, to what extent does your law enforcement agency make it easy for community members to provide input, e.g. comments, suggestions, and concerns? 4, to what extent does your law enforcement agency work together with the community members to solve local problems? 5, community policing involves officers in your law enforcement agency working with the community to address the causes of crime in an effort to reduce the problems themselves through a wide range of activities. Based on this definition, to what extent do you think your law enforcement agency practices community policing? Safety. Please select the 3 issues you think are the greatest problems within your community. And the list of things to check includes burglaries and thefts, auto, burglaries and thefts, residential, child abuse, child sexual predators / internet safety, disorderly conduct / public intoxication / noise violations, disorderly youth, e.g. cruising or gathering, domestic violence, adult, driving under the influence, i.e. alcohol or drugs, drug abuse, e.g. the manufacture, sale, or use of illegal / prescription drugs, fraud / identity theft, gang activity, gun violence, hate crimes, homeland security problems, homeless or transient related problems, panhandling, homicide, mugging, physical assault, prostitution, school safety, e.g. bullying, fighting, or weapons, sexual assault / rape, adult, traffic issues / residential speeding, underage drinking, and vandalism / graffiti. 7, to what extent do you feel safe in your community when you're outside alone during the day? 8, to what extent do you feel safe in your community when you're outside alone at night? 9, over the last 12 months, to what extent have your feelings of safety in your community increased, decreased, or stayed the same? Procedural justice. 10, to what extent do officers in your law enforcement agency treat people fairly? 11, to what extent do officers in your law enforcement agency show concern for community members? 12, to what extent are officers in your law enforcement agency respectful? 13, to what extent is your law enforcement agency responsive to the concerns of community members? 14, to what extent do you trust your law enforcement agency? 15, if you had contact with an officer in your law enforcement agency during the past 12 months, to what extent did the officer sufficiently explain his or her actions and procedures? Performance. 16, to what extent is your law enforcement agency effective at proactively preventing crime? 17, to what extent is your law enforcement agency addressing the problems that really concern you? 18, to what extent are you satisfied with the overall performance of your law enforcement agency? Contact and satisfaction. 19A, how many times in the past 12 months have you had contact with your law enforcement agency for traffic issues, e.g. citation, warning, or vehicle crash? 19B, to what extent are you satisfied with your interactions with your law enforcement agency for traffic issues? 20A, how many times in the past 12 months have you had contact with your law enforcement agency for 911 emergency calls? 20B, to what extent are you satisfied with your interactions with your law enforcement agency for 911 emergency calls? 21A, how many times in the past 12 months have you had contact with your law enforcement agency for non-emergency calls, e.g. to report a crime or suspicious activity? 21B, to what extent are you satisfied with your interactions with your law enforcement agency for non-emergency calls? 22A, how many times in the past 12 months have you had contact with your law enforcement agency for other contacts or interactions, e.g. attend a community meeting or talk to an officer on patrol? 22B, to what extent are you satisfied with your interactions with your law enforcement agency or other contacts for other contacts or interactions? Demographics, how many years have you lived in your community? 24, what is your gender? Male, female, or prefer not to answer? 25, are you Hispanic or Latino? 26, what is your race? 27, what is your age group? And this runs from 17 years or younger through 70 years or older, and prefer not to answer. And that's it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Lee, for reading that off. I mean, this is pretty thorough, and I think that some of the questions where it's to what extent do you blah blah blah, we might want to add a text box that actually says if the answer is no, please explain. So, for example, do you trust your police department? If the answer is no, please explain. Or if you had a bad, have you had good experiences, whatever. So I think a text box with some of these questions may make sense. And that's something that Dr. Blair, maybe we can look at in more detail and all of us can review. And I think that last time we were talking about the issue of people who might want to make a complaint against a police officer. So we might want to add, if you have a complaint against a police officer, do you know how to file that complaint? And then as a follow-on question, do you know what your rights are as a citizen if you do so? Because I think that we were discussing a little bit that our police department here follows very standard protocols regarding complaints, and if a complaint warrants an internal investigation, it'll trigger an internal investigation. But I think it might be worthwhile, because I don't think that was part of the questions that you read. But I know that from discussion, and Pat, Leehan mentioned last time that that may be a question or an issue for people here in this community. So we can just add that. And I don't recall off the top of my head if there are any other specific questions we had discussed in the past month. Does anyone else have any thoughts? And I should add that, this is pretty thorough. So when we do a follow-up survey to see what kind of movement there's been, et cetera, that we will be doing other surveys. So, and we can decide amongst ourselves how often, whether we do this quarterly or, twice a year or whatever. So I saw a couple of things pop up, and in this interface, wait a minute, let me see if I can actually see them. Oh, good question. Pat Leehan says, will respondents be responding based on LVPD, sheriff, state police, or NMHU law enforcement? I think we should specify that so that they know, who and what they're responding to. And I think that this survey comes out of the LVPD, so it should be mostly focused on the LVPD. But because there's a little bit of overlap in our communities with the NMHU law enforcement, we may want to consider mentioning that as well. As far as sheriff or state police, that's probably a little bit less relevant. I mean, Chief, you can tell me what you think, but it's mostly going to be in town in LVPD jurisdiction, correct?
Yeah, I think for now it should just be for Las Vegas Police Department.
Okay.
Just because we do interact with New Mexico University, but it's on a different, when they call for assistance under an MOU or anything like that. So we really don't know the calls for service they're handling.
Okay.
Same thing with Sheriff's Department or State Police. Also, I think, we're going to be answering 30 questions, and sometimes people don't want to answer the 30 questions. So maybe we can go from each different category and maybe pick 2 out of the 30 or something like that. I think, we want to keep it a simple and short survey, because people tend to look at it and say, oh, that's too many questions to answer for today.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the longer the survey is, when people pop it open, the less likely. I mean, what we should do, and I know we had discussed this, and Dr. Blay mentioned this as well, at the very beginning of the survey, we should say, this survey should take you 10 minutes to fill out, or something like that, whatever the estimate is. If you want to shorten it or simplify it a little bit, we can do that. I think that Kimberly just posted the actual survey PDF. So we should look at that. And also, Alexis, this survey PDF, or the questions on it, should probably be posted as part of the meeting notes as well, or as an addendum, so that anybody in the public can look at them and say, well, how come they're not asking about this or that? But I do think we should add the question that Pat Leehan brought up about if you have a complaint against a police officer, how do you do that? Do you know how to do it, and where are the forms and whatever? Just to see what kind of how people feel about that. Any further thoughts or any I mean, if we're going to edit this a little bit, we probably need to do that, post it with the minutes before we vote on it, which means we can't vote on it until next meeting. Does anyone disagree with that?
I would add that, Roy, I think you're correct. If it's going to be a formal action of the commission, then we definitely should post that in advance. I will also add that prior to our upon our last meeting, I did prepare the data collection protocol that would help guide us in the administration of the survey. I believe I sent it to Chief Crispin and Alexis. But basically, it highlights what our purpose is, and it specifically states here the Las Vegas Police Department will be administering the Community Policing Survey in order to better understand the perceptions of the Las Vegas Police Department and their officers from members of the municipality of Las Vegas, New Mexico. Then we'd have a link there. The informed consent statement includes demographic information may be collected, but there will not be any personally identifying information collected. Only individuals who are over the age of 18 will be permitted to complete the survey. I'm going to take a moment to pause because I noticed when Lee was going over the survey that it appears as though they have used this survey to collect information from people who are under the age of 18. So I did make note of that, and I think that that's something that we can consider. Typically, you would need a parental consent for that. The next piece of the data collection protocol is advertisement of the survey. The survey will be advertised through the survey link being placed on the website and social media accounts of the City of Las Vegas, the My 311 app, as well as through paper copies. Sample size, we talked about that last time. I state it is a goal to collect a total amount of surveys that equal 20% of the population of the municipality of Las Vegas of individuals who are 18 years of age and older. And then the time frame for administration, the survey will be administered for X months. We need to determine what that would look like. And then finally, the survey will be administered regularly to assist the Las Vegas Police Department with gaining an understanding of trends about community policing within the city of Las Vegas. So I typed that up based on our previous conversations that we had about the survey. Typically, what I have seen is if people complete a survey, there's like this consent form with this information on the front page of a hard copy. If it's something that is done through a SurveyMonkey link or digitally, there's this information listed, and the person is able to read that information in advance. To your point, Roy, we can also add language that says this survey should take approximately 5 to 10 minutes to complete. I think that would be helpful information to add, but I don't know how you all want to. I don't think it was sent out to everybody, but I did send it to Chief Crispin and Alexis. So I don't know if you all want to review that in advance of the next meeting as well, with the survey and any modified or added questions that we would include.
Yeah, actually, if you could send it out to all of us, that would be great. Everything you said sounds fantastic. I think that, again, Alexis, that should be what Kimberly just said, should be posted along as an addendum to the agenda for public review, along with the questions themselves. And then what we need to do, because Chief Crispin brought up an important point, we may want to edit those questions down a little bit and then decide if we want to add a text field for people to type in comments on some of those questions. It doesn't have to be every single question, but there's going to be instances where somebody might say, would like to, no, the answer is no, and here's why. And that could be very, very helpful for the department, I think.
And I also think we need to, can we change the the somewhat or to maybe numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, from 0 to 5. And I think that gives us a better perception of what we're looking at. I don't know how SurveyMonkey would work on that. Dr. Blair, would it help us better understand, or?
Yeah, you're talking about in terms of a rating, like
the rating.
How do you rate your interactions from what? Yeah, no, I think we can do that in SurveyMonkey easily.
Yeah, that would be easy to do.
Okay.
So this is Pat. I just want to, I don't know if there's reliability and validity measurements for this COPS survey, but when you start messing with a standardized survey, you can affect the reliability or validity. So I'd just be mindful about that and run it past some academic types, maybe like Kimberly or others, before messing too much with a standardized survey. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Pat, are you referring to the survey questions themselves, or are you referring to if we edit the survey from the Department of Justice and add like rate from 1 to 5 or something like that?
Well, those standard Likert scale types of options that are there now on the COPS survey, that's pretty standard methodology. That's pretty standard for a research survey. And that helps people know what is 1 to 5. I think to get a most accurate survey result, you do kind of want to help people along with what those mean as clearly as you can. And those categories, as they're worded right now, actually are those are good evidence-based terminology that you would want to use on a survey. So I would just, if you do any of that kind of editing, I would make sure you run it past someone who either teaches this or does it for a living, just so your data is as accurate as possible.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Good comment, Pat.
Just an idea. If the motivator behind going from 1 or 0 to 5 is to have something that is easier to quantify, numbers that are easier to crunch, we can assign those numbers internally and still leave the questions as they are on the survey.
Okay, so in other words, sort of break that out, and so that we have a little bit of a clue, but we're not actually altering the survey questions.
Exactly.
Okay, well, we'll look at that. I mean, let's post these, get public input, and then we'll look at this. I think what would be helpful is to actually sort of reformat this with Kimberly's preface at the top. In other words, basically just lay out the survey in SurveyMonkey and just look at it and say, okay, well, this looks good, or maybe on this part we should add some 1 to 5 type responses or not. Okay, yeah, Pat just mentioned that the community health survey is about the same length as the survey, and it's quick and easy to fill out. So yeah, I think that even though there's a lot of questions, I think most people will have a pretty instantaneous response to most questions, and we'll be able to answer them quickly. The text box thing that I mentioned, I mean, we don't have to do that. I just think that I'm the kind of guy, when I answer a survey, I often get frustrated and go, well, I have kind of a special case here I'd like to talk about, but I don't have an opportunity to do that. So what we could do is we could just add a whole separate thing that is different, maybe tag it on to the back, Kimberly, of the WebMonkey, where there's no question, but it just says, if you have additional questions or comments, please type them in here. That way people can say whatever they want, which could be helpful to the chief in DC, but it's not going to interfere with the survey structure itself. What do you think of that?
I think that's always helpful when you're doing a quantitative survey like this, to provide the opportunity for qualitative information that respondents can provide that you don't always get from a quantitative survey. So I definitely think it's great. It doesn't necessarily modify the survey per se. We're just asking for additional information. And so anybody who would want to provide that will have an opportunity at the end. And then that gives us some additional information. I'm going to also type into the chat the link to the New Mexico Community Survey that Pat mentioned. I'm just going to do a plug. If you haven't completed that survey, please do it. That really helps us in being able to assess perceptions around substance use in San Miguel County. That's a grant I oversee at the university that we're doing that work specifically. And then there's also the 100% community survey that I'll put the the link in the chat as well for anybody who may not have been able to complete that.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So I think that the next steps then is we're going to post this information along with the agenda as an addendum to the agenda, so that anybody in the public can look at it and comment before we put this together. But I think the next functional step is to actually start laying out a SurveyMonkey survey so that we can actually see it with Dr. Blaya's preface up front, see the questions, frame the text box at the end, and then it'll be a lot easier for us to vote on and approve in that form. That way we're not talking about 3 or 4 different things conceptually. Does everyone agree? Do I hear any objections to that? We don't have to vote on this right now, but just your thoughts. Okay, so we'll do that. So we'll have another round if anyone's interested of community input, and then next meeting we should be able to approve the actual questions and the layout, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Kimberly, will you be doing the SurveyMonkey yourself, or do you have student interns who will actually lay this out for us?
I do not have the capacity right now to dedicate the time to put the survey together, and I don't have student interns directly working for me. I can try to reach out, but to see if there's some students, but given that the semester is only 1 month left, I don't know if we'll have the time to get a student assistance on this project.
Okay. Okay, so somebody's going to have to put the load this information into SurveyMonkey and actually create like a draft survey. So I'll also ask around and see if there's any students that, Luna or elsewhere that may be able to help with this. I mean, there may be a student at UWC that can do this. We'll just ask around because I think
my daughter.
I'm sorry, Chief?
I'll reach out to my daughter. Maybe she can help us. She's graduating, so.
Okay, cool.
I think she knows how to do that. I'm not tech savvy like all those kids already. So.
Well, you can tell your daughter, come on, help your dad. That's great. So we'll all just ask around and see if we can find somebody who can actually just put this together. Obviously, populating a SurveyMonkey survey is not that big of a deal. So it shouldn't, if your daughter does it or if a student or an intern does it, it shouldn't actually take that long since the questions are already pretty much done. Okay, so no vote needs to be taken on the on the survey today. We're just going to post that information. So unless there's an objection, let's move on to the bylaws and mission. I looked at the bylaws again, and they look like the same bylaws I looked at like a year ago and 2 years ago and 3 years ago. So I don't think that they've really changed, or if they have changed, they haven't changed substantially. And I think that, as we discussed before, and as Lee pointed out, the bylaws are a little bit vague about what our actual role is. It just says whatever the governing body wants us to do, which, is pretty open-ended. But I think that we understand that our role is to assist the police department and also to assist the community and to help build bridges between the community and the police. So the question then becomes, do we want to actually change these bylaws, or not change them, but actually add a little paragraph that specifies or clarifies a little bit what we actually do? Or do we want to just keep it vague? Because, there's a disadvantage of being vague, which is we may do some things and spend 3 months doing things and voting on things only to be told, well, we were not authorized to do that. Or the other thing is that, we might get caught off guard due to circumstances or events or whatever, and the governing body is going to say, well, we need to do this like right away, and it's something that we're not even cognizant of or thinking about. So any thoughts on this? Do we want to add a paragraph to the bylaws? And if so, we need to actually present that to the governing body and get some feedback on that. And they actually have to vote on it. And I think, Lee, you mentioned the protocol for actually changing that. It's not just a simple vote, correct? No, you're muted.
Yeah, here's the thing. It's the city charter that requires the city council to define the powers and duties of the Police Advisory Commission by means of an ordinance. So yes, it's a big thing and it's a big deal, and it would require at the minimum publishing their ordinance, not our bylaws. I mean, as far as I know, we can enact our bylaws, we can change our bylaws. They should conform to what the city council has directed us to do. But right now, the city council hasn't taken the step of drafting and enacting that ordinance that would give us our marching orders.
So let me ask you a question then. Should we make a request as a council? I mean, is the city council even aware that we're having this discussion? Should we make a request?
I can say that at least some members of the city council are aware that this is under discussion, but permission to speak freely?
You're being recorded, so you can speak as free as you'd like to speak.
I will speak as free as I like to speak without really engaging in any scandal. But in a perfect world, what we would do is involve the community in a discussion with the city council and with the police chief and presumably with the police union to hammer out something that the community finds acceptable and empowering and satisfying, answers their needs, works for the police department, is acceptable to the city council. I mean, we don't have, let me choose my words carefully. If we approach this like we're making instant pudding, add water, stir, and serve, much like instant pudding, probably not going to be as good as we would like. If we are going to do this really the right way, it's going to take community involvement, and that's what community policing is, right?
Yeah.
And it will be a process, and that's not to say, we don't have to get this done now. The city council doesn't have to do it immediately. I mean, they haven't done it for more than a decade, so a little more time isn't going to kill us, and a little more time, if we initiate it now and proceed thoughtfully, could really be to the benefit of the community and all involved.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that, I mean, we're kind of in this for the long haul. I know that I accepted a 4-year chair position, so Kimberly's on board for 2 years. So I think that it's something we should invest in. I mean, we've been operating with only the bylaws, and but I think the bylaws, again, my only concern is that because they're so vague, that I don't want to spend months of our time, figuring things out, voting on things, only to be told, well, you're not authorized to do that. So I think that some clarification would be helpful. And so, Lee, let's have this. So what is the steps then to put this out to the community, to the governing body, everybody who should be involved in this process? Is this something that we should add as an item, addendum again to the agenda so that the public can see it? Do we need to make an announcement? Do we need to publish for public input in the paper? What in your estimation, what is the best way to do this?
Well, the next step in terms of what has to happen according to charter and ordinance is the city council needs to enact the ordinance that defines what we do, and then we would look at our bylaws and make sure that our bylaws conform to our powers and duties as determined by the city council through ordinance. And what I'm saying is they need the city council should be in the driver's seat for the next step. But I think we need to convey to them with some element of urgency that, whereas we don't have to have this done next week, the next step is really important and they need to take it. Even if it's just announcing we need help with the next step and we solicit community input.
Yeah, okay, that sounds fine. So it sounds like one or two of us needs to attend the next council meeting and get something on the agenda about this.
If we get something on the agenda, my interesting time with public input under the pandemic is that if it's not on the agenda, I can't talk about it, which means I can't tell them it needs to be on the agenda.
That is funny. Well, all right. Well, let's see what we can do to get it on the agenda.
I think as a board and as the chair, you can get on the agenda
Okay.
to speak about our police advisory commission, where we're at, what we've been doing. So you can give a advisory commission report under our police advisory commission. So
I see. Yeah, that makes total sense. We can actually submit a little report. And Lee, is that something that I can work with you on as far as making sure it actually gets not just on the agenda, but that the request gets through to the council?
Absolutely.
we
Okay.
can do that through Alexis too.
Okay, now I know that we also have, here's a question that, another technical question for Lee, but if you and I coordinate that in terms of just putting together a little report for the city council, getting on the agenda and making the point that we actually need to address this one issue with community input, I hope that does not constitute a rolling quorum. Otherwise, we're going to need to do it right here on this meeting. What do you think, Lee?
Are we saying, would you like to present with me at the next city council meeting?
Well, we need to get on the agenda first. So I need to get, we need to let the council know that the Police Community Partnership Advisory Commission has a report to make, and we need to get that on the agenda. And in the report, we can mention that this is an issue that we need to work on, or that they need to work on with the community.
I don't think that should be a problem, and I will talk to people at the city and see what we need to do to actually get on the agenda for the next regular meeting.
Okay, sounds good. But Chief, thank you. I appreciate the idea of just putting it in our report makes total sense. Okay. All right. So Lee, you and I will follow up on that specific request and make sure that we're on the agenda and can make a report. We'll just do it.
Roy,
Yes. Go ahead.
like Chief says, I can get that done. Do you want me to do that, Chief?
Get that on the agenda for the city council.
Yeah, do a request.
Sure. If it's fine with the chief, it's fine with me.
Yeah, it's probably easier. We can do the on the agenda.
Okay, so that means, Lee, all we have to do is just draft a report and make sure that we have wording in there that is clear to the city council that this is an issue that has come up in our meetings, and that due to the ordinance and blah, 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 that the city council needs to look at this. And there's time, there's no huge rush, but the sooner they start the process for community input, the better.
And I think that I guess my vision for the commission would be a community resource for myself as the chief, and then in the formation of strategies, community policing concepts, and to create public awareness for our community. And that falls within the community policing, and that's my vision for our commission as far. So, I know they're charters and everything now, and I don't know if they reviewed our part of the Police Advisory Commission charter. I guess we would have to get with the charter review board to see if they've reviewed our charter yet. on the Police Advisory Commission. So, I might have to ask that question also. Have you looked at our bylaws and rules and see if you're going to change those?
Well, it might be most effective because I know, Chief, that you can also make a report to the City Council if the Commission itself made a request, and if you also made the request, so that they know that we're actually kind of coordinating. That way, they're going to hear it twice, and it'll sort of sink in that this is something that does need to be addressed. And then, even as Lee pointed out, this has not been addressed for over 10 years. So that doesn't mean we can't function, but it just means that we could end up wasting a lot of time. And because we have public input and we're an official body, we also don't want to waste the public's time. So I think that if we can both bring this up, because your statement about, helping you in terms of strategy and, input and all this sort of thing, the words that you just spoke, I think are important. And so I think if they hear it from both of us, it'll help.
Yeah, that sounds good, and Alexis can put you on the agenda. I do a monthly chief's report, and that's on the first council meeting of every month that I do, and I just did my chief's report last night.
Okay.
And, just to share some numbers with you for our police department itself. Our calls for service were 1,658 calls for service. We have about 18 officers out there, so that's about 100 calls per service per officer a month that they're responding to. This was a big eye opener for me, but we had 0 burglaries reported, and I think one of those things that gets me is our officers are being proactive out there. They're patrolling their areas, but also our people not reporting. I weigh the good with the bad, right? So we have those, what we have is our officers in each district. So one officer will take a district for a month, and that's how they're practicing their community policing. They're out there speaking with the residents and learning who lives in what residential areas. Mm-hmm. We had 584 traffic citations that were issued out to the public. That's and then we're waiting on our computer stands. I mean, not our computer stands. We're waiting on our computers to be installed into our vehicles. We're about 95% complete. We're waiting on Tyler, the software that we use through the company. So we're waiting on them to open up some modules for us and download it. So that's what we're doing with those in-car computers. So hopefully, beginning of May, we'll have our in-car computers, and our officers will be out there more and be able to work more efficiently. I also want to go to E-Citation. Our citations, we're still writing them on paper, and I want to go to computerized, so we'll be able to communicate with our municipal court. Our officers will print out their copy for the offender, the violator, and then they'll send that directly to the court. So we have, they'll have record of it right away instead of waiting a day or two for it. So that's what we're working on right now.
Okay, that sounds great. Actually, Chief and Lee, anybody who knows, when is the actual next City Council meeting? Just so that.
It is May. Do you have the date, Alex?
Checking right now. 1 second.
I'm not sure.
Okay, no, that's fine.
And that's also my question to the committee here, the commission is, are you all thinking of doing these in person soon, or are we fine with, virtual? And that would be up to the commission itself.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm fine with keeping it virtual. If there's anybody on this commission who is uncomfortable with getting together in person yet for any reason, maybe they haven't gotten a vaccine or whatever their reason is, or they're caring for an elderly parent or something. I think one good thing about doing these online is that I think as we go along month to month, I anticipate we'll have more public input and public presentations, which is pretty easy to do on Zoom. But I think that I don't know if we need to vote on that this meeting, but it's something we should think about. If everybody on this commission wants to meet in person, I'm okay with that. But I think everybody individually should have a say in that.
And I'm not sure how it works. I am fine with following the city's lead. If they, in the interest of health and safety, say that they don't support any of us city appendages meeting in person until things get better with the pandemic, I don't know how much authority we have to say we want to do something different.
Right. And there's also CDC guidelines. It's confusing, though, because every day you hear, oh, San Miguel is green, and, you can now have 25 people together. So I think that we should kind of step into this, because the main thing is I want everyone to feel comfortable. I don't want anybody to show up and be uncomfortable showing up in person. But yeah, there's the city guidelines, the state guidelines, and the CDC guidelines. So for the time being, we'll follow those. And I think we should be a little bit conservative.
So I don't find the next council meeting date yet. So once they post that, I will let you guys all know.
Okay, thank you, Alexis.
You're welcome.
I see Joe has his hand raised, Roy.
Yes, Joseph, were you going to say something?
Yeah, as we develop this relationship with the city council, I'm really interested that we clarify any question of oversight with the police department. I feel like I'm concerned about diluting the power of the city council and being an intervening bureaucracy or a confusing problem if questions ever come up. So I hope that any oversight will be clarified in our relationship and our role as compared to the city council.
Yeah, I think I can say with some confidence that in years past, we've never had any sort of oversight authority at all. We're really here to sort of be a bridge, a liaison between the community and the police, and help however we can. But I do agree that the city council should actually clarify that and actually say that this is not an oversight body or whatever. The more clear, the better, I think.
Thanks. You're muted, Roy.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I'm just looking at the next agenda item is next meeting and time. So I think that's already set. We're talking about the third Thursday, which would be May 20th, 2021 at 3 p.m., which is our standard meeting time. And I think we figured out everything we need to do. We didn't actually take any specific votes today, so that's fine. We'll have I think some things next week with the survey to vote on. And we should have, by the next meeting, we should know what the city council's response is in terms of, the ordinance, the bylaws, and whether or not they're going to do anything about that. So, because I believe the city council meeting happens before this meeting. So hopefully we'll have something to report at that time. And Lee, I'll be in touch with you about the specific wording of what we're going to present to the city regarding this particular topic. And the chief is going to represent him, his department as well. So is there any other business? I see we have, a couple of guests here. Is there any other business that, that we didn't cover that anyone would like to bring up at this point?
You know, the chief, you mentioned the possibility of experiencing the simulator that's
Oh, yeah.
available now out at Camp Luna. I'm interested in doing that.
Yeah, so am I. Thank you for bringing that up, Joseph. I forgot about that.
So just to clarify, Camp Luna got 2 simulators. They got these virtual 1000 simulators or 100s. They're more advanced, I would say. But we have our own simulator here, and we purchased one just not too long ago. So ours is called the Milo system. Theirs is called the Virtua. So theirs was probably $100,000 each. Ours was $40,000, and it does almost the same thing. So we do have our Milo system. It does have 980 some scenarios that you can go through. So I invite whoever wants to come and try it out and experience it to let us know. Give Alexis a call in advance so we can set it up for you, and you can come in and experience it.
And do we need to coordinate timing on that, or can we just do that individually as time allows for us?
Well, I would like at least a day in advance so our instructor can set that up for us. That we don't have it set up all the time because our training room facility is a small facility, and we're trying to make it a little bigger, more spacious. So we're going to be doing a little bit of remodeling coming up hopefully this year to make it easier to work with and be able to leave that machine up more often than not.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm sure we can give you more than a day's notice, maybe a week's notice, but did you want us to come in groups as part of the commission, like 2 or 3 of us at a time, or does it matter if we're individuals?
Well, I think if you come 3 or more, it becomes a rolling quorum. So I know 2.
Thanks for pointing that out. Okay, so 1 or 2 at a time. That's funny. Okay, we will avoid the rolling quorum thing. All right, thank you. Yeah, because I think some of us are interested. I think it'd be fascinating. So,
yeah, Alexis just put her information on the chat, so you can reach out to her and we can set that up for you.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm just recording the chat for myself as well. All right.
Just to give you guys a heads up, we're looking at, I know there's controversy with the scooters right now, but for us on community policing, we're going to be probably here in the near future purchasing some trike bikes. I don't know if you saw us on them last week. We had one for 2.5 days, and we had an officer out there riding it, operating it. And so we're looking at getting some of those. We're probably going to purchase about 4 of them. Community policing, we got a lot of good feedback on them from the community out here. So we're looking at that just to practice more community policing, right? Being able to be out and approachable instead of being in our police cars, and so we're working on that too.
Okay, that sounds great. All right, is there anything else that anybody on this Zoom call wants to cover? Is it Google call? Okay, I guess we can wrap it up then. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
Do we have a second?
Indeed you do. Seconded.
Lee seconds. Thank you, Pat. And all those in favor say aye and wave your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed? None opposed? This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.